Hello and welcome to another episode of the ICC Academy Livecast, a new podcast series where we take a deeper dive into global business trends and ideas. I'm your host Thomas Paris, and in this episode, we will look up and gaze at the world of cloud technology and how the industry is evolving. Our special guest today is Aneesha Reihana, Director of Digital Transformation at CCTS Global, which stands for Consumer Cloud Technology Services. Thank you so much for joining us, Aneesha. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me here today.
So before we get started, we have a bit of a tradition here where we ask all of our guests to tell us a little bit about their background, their passion for the topic itself, and maybe this could be an opportunity for you to explain a little bit about what you do at CCTS.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. If I was to explain about myself in one sentence with relation to technology, I would say I'm somebody who's very excited by technology. Latest technology excites me, and I'm somebody who always find ways and opportunities to leverage on technology to make my life easier. So you would find it interesting to know that I was a finance major. I started out my career as an accountant and auditor by training. So during my profession as an auditor, I would always find ways to leverage on technology to make life easier for an auditor. You know, we have to skim through lots of papers and lots of documents and do a lot of manual work. So I would, at that time, the simplest things I would know how to manipulate and automate was Excel sheets. So I would use Excel sheets to automate the calculations, to make paperwork easier. And from there, progressively, I would find more tools that will make automation a smoother process. In Singapore, as you know, it's a very common culture to study and work at the same time. So as I was working, I was also studying my undergrad program in finance. So in finance, it was evolving and it was innovating and in moving towards technology. And that's when progressively I learned about fintech, blockchain, and of course emerging technologies that came along with it. Few years after that, I progressed in my career and I became an expert in fintech. That's when I was approached by CCTS to join them as a subject matter of the same. And I was asked to head the e-invoicing project, which was initiated by IMDA. I was very blessed that in CCTS, apart from fintech, e-invoicing, the project that I led, I was also exposed to other technologies like robotic process automation, big data transformation, RFID transformation, and it was amazing how I was able to see this small companies, SMEs, enterprises leverage on technologies and also accept our consultation and apply these technologies in their companies and automate the processes, help their employers to leverage on technology to make life easier, to make productivity more efficient, and to see how this technology will boost their businesses and also the quality of their lives of their employees. So very blessed that I had the exposure of all the latest technologies, and thank you for having me here to discuss about cloud transformation.
It's our pleasure. Maybe we can take a broad look at what we mean when we say the cloud. So there are different types of platforms and services that go into that, but maybe even further back than that, what is it that we mean when we say that something is in the cloud?
So traditionally, back then, you have a desktop, you have your CPU, which was like a giant brick, and that's all it was. So all the information was in that giant brick, and that's when you called it the on-premises server. All your data, your storage, everything is in there, and that's your local storage. Now, when you move this away to something that is centralized away from you, somebody else takes care of this infrastructure and puts it in a safe place, that's where we call it cloud computing. So you can access it from anywhere. You don't have to be in an office.
Right.
So there are various, so that's when various different services were formed. The first one, we will call it the infrastructure as a service. So basically, when the service provider, the cloud service provider, provides you with the virtualization, the servers, storage, and networking, that's infrastructure as a service. Then that's when you provide your own application, data, runtime, middleware, and operating system. And the next type of service, platform as a service, that's more common, where like similar things like Uber, it's platform as a service. They provide for you everything. You put the application and your data on top of it. And of course, the most common is software as a service. So now it's all you download, you pay as you use. Maybe, or a fun element or something more fun, I will describe this in pizza service, pizza as a service, okay? So the traditional on-premises is where you're a traditional businessman, you have the brick and mortar pizza joint, everything from the stove, the pizza dough, the toppings, you cook the pizza, the kitchen, everything is you. So when now, if you're going to use kitchen as a service or infrastructure as a service, the vendor or the service provider gives you the kitchen, the gas, and the oven. So that's provided for you. As the pizza joint owner, you just have to have your ingredients, which is the pizza dough or the toppings, and then you cook the pizza. The manpower is yours. So that's infrastructure as a service. Are we getting where I'm at?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So then next, platform as a service. In relevance to pizza, you walk in and bake. So how that works is that when the service provider, basically now he provides you with the kitchen, the gas, the oven, and the pizza dough. But what you have to come in is you have to come in with your resource and your toppings, do whatever magic you want, and then cook the pizza. That's there. That's cloud platform as a service. And the last, it's the lazy man show, where everything is done for you. You just dial a pizza. So, that's software as a service or pizza as a service.
Okay.
So, yeah, that is cloud services as a whole. That's what it is now. Of course, Revolution will have it, maybe 5 years down the road or even 2 years down the road, we'll be talking new types of services. I don't know, but let's see where it goes then.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would be a real-world example of the IaaS, which is the infrastructure one?
The big giants, of course. The big giants, Amazon, Azure. Azure made a big announcement yesterday. Wow, that was fantastic, and it was all over social media. Google, these big giants, or even the smaller players where if enterprises are not very willing to go with these big names for some regulatory issues or something like that, then they're smaller players as well.
Okay.
But infrastructure, predominantly these big names where they have huge infrastructure. Yes. Yep.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about the different players in the field. What I'm curious about is which industries have really benefited the most from using the cloud? Maybe not so much on the provider side, but on the client side. Which ones have been transformed by using cloud technologies?
For this question, I think I would answer which industry has benefited social impact, positive social impact. Namely, it will be education. Gone are the days where you have to go to the library and pick up a book, or you have something that you have to go to the computer lab and where the local service provide you whatever digital content you want. You can now study from wherever you have to study. Like
online education, that sounds crazy.
Yes. That's not all. Wait till you have to. When I was doing my degree program with a local university, when we had to submit our assignments, you have to run it through this plagiarism tool. And that tool will run your assignment against the internet. So there's no way you could plagiarize. So immediately, if you copy and paste anything directly, it will detect. And anything more than 30%, it's rejected. You can't submit it. That is purely unfair, but that's how education has evolved and how universities maintain their standards. Another example I would give with this education utilizing cloud is that when you have to move abroad, or nowadays with globalization, you have to travel a lot. So when you can access your university materials from anywhere around the world, that's beneficial. Or whereas in different countries where the geographical location is really big, you can't access city, you can't access the campus, and you're still you can access all the content through your laptop. that's amazing. You're not confined or restricted by the geographical disadvantages. You still can get your degree from where you are. So that's amazing. And collaborative learning as well. With cloud, you've got scalability when everybody can join in. You've got tools added into the platform, and people can contribute, and you can learn so much more with other people's experience. And apart from education, healthcare. Right. For the very basic reason that agility, you don't have to repeat your records. Your records can be retrieved from a central cloud system or central national records. Especially when it's so sensitive, people need to know if what is your allergy in case you're found in an accident. We can go retrieve the record and know what is your history, as compared to you being in the ER and I got no clue who this Jane Doe is. Yeah, so that's another thing. And I think thirdly, most importantly for the business sector, is financial services.
Right.
With the innovation of cloud, you've got amazing fintech innovation, where you can offer financial services that the banks do not traditionally offer to smaller businesses due to their credit scores or whatever regulations and policies. One example is peer-to-peer lending. That's platform as a service, where they form an ecosystem and they take on the responsibility of providing a leverage to do micro lending. That's amazing. I think I've seen a lot of smaller businesses benefit from it. And these kind of platforms, they're just amazing. When some passionate business owners, all they have the problem is a cash flow problem, and these peer-to-peer lending services, they offer this service, and how business grows beautifully when this challenge is solved is amazing.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess in a nutshell, this three, and that itself is so much.
Of course. Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll get into the concerns when it comes to regulation and privacy. We'll get to that a little bit later. But those things aside, what are the industries that have been reluctant to adopt those kinds of technologies?
More than saying industry, more than pinpointing it as industry specific, I would say people specific.
Okay.
Whenever we go consult, the challenges that we face is getting the buy-in. Human psychology, when you have a very fixed perception of subject matter, it will take time to change.
The issue then, what you're underlining, is change management when it comes to internal, within the company, of trying to make that transition. What do you think are the building blocks of a successful enterprise project? What are the ways of getting within a company the motivation to adopt the cloud, whether it's on a small scale or whether it's really transforming the way that they do their entire business model and putting that online?
So basically, digital transformation or cloud innovation is not a one-time project.
Yeah.
It is a process. It is a beautiful journey. Sometimes it's almost as, being pregnant and delivering the baby. Because, you have to be really careful throughout the process. And once again, the most important building block or prerequisite of the building blocks is people. Why I mentioned 3 times is because the project sponsors internally, the owners, project sponsors, the employees, and of course the customers.
Right.
Yeah. So these are the people that are very fundamental to the success of the project. And how you achieve that is through a plan, the strategy, and how innovative it is. It has to be innovation that makes sense, not use a simple buzzword. Like, what is the strategy? What is the foresight? How far are you looking? How near are you looking? What's next? What is the current digital blueprint? What is the layer going to add? Is there any value add? And what are the pain points or the challenges you're solving? Or are you trying to beat or hit a trend as a first mover and benefit from it before the rest? So these are the questions you should ask yourself when you're strategizing and you're trying to innovate a process or a digitalization process. So I guess that's when leaders come up with interesting, innovative ways to achieve this. Like sometimes we do prototyping, where we try not to shock the entire system, but you form a cell and said, okay, go do this, let's see if it works. If it works with a pilot, we will roll it out.
Right.
So that's a way where, you still have business as usual, and then, you try to innovate something new and see if it's possible to roll it out to the rest of the organization. And remember, I mentioned the next customer. Customer's decision journey is very, very important. I mean, who are you building it for at the end, both internally and externally as well? They need some motivation to adapt to the change. So with that comes better adoption, customer satisfaction, revenue growth, obviously. And if these processes are effective, obviously with lower cost, you've got better revenue as well. So for example, like accounting solutions, they are SaaS models, predominantly SaaS models nowadays. When I was an auditor, it was very painful. It's credit or debit. Which one goes credit? Which ones go debit? Right now, it's so intuitive. You don't have to know bookkeeping. The software literally speaks to you. The SaaS, the application just literally speaks to you and tells you what to go, where to go in very simple layman language. You don't have to have an accounting background. And that's the customer's journey, and that will promote or motivate me to use the service. So, and of course, process automation. With the advancement of technology, simple things like manual data entry, if that can be automated, it can be automated with OCR. You should adopt that and see which processes, mundane processes, can be automated. In today's fast-paced environment, I think leaders have to adopt an agile and flexible, more collaborative model. And successful leaders, technology leaders, they are agile and they simplify processes. I think an ideal structure will be where the strategy is aligned to the organization and customer objectives, with a focus on the fast project-based structure.
Has it been helpful for you to have so many case scenarios of businesses integrating cloud technology? This shift has been blossoming all over the world, and I was wondering if it's been useful for you to be able to finally point around and say, look, these guys have a really good idea, and you can too. Or are you getting to a point now where it's almost an option paralysis with so many potential applications that some clients don't even know where to start?
The answer would be, thankfully, there's not much of option paralysis at this moment, because our clients trust our recommendation, and we have few trusted partners, and we usually recommend based on our pool of partners and the cloud service providers we work with. So I guess, and of course we show them and share with them the proven case studies and use cases, and that's when they pick one. I don't know, when you were asking me that question, somehow the visuals that came up to my mind is as if being an Indian walking to the sari shop and you're asking me which sari would you like? Yeah, which sari would you like? What would you like? If I'm looking at a room full, I'm just gonna walk out. Whereas if I go to a boutique and the salesperson knows me inside out, knows me what I like, or my likes, dislikes, and knows what colors I prefer, and they recommend, okay, this is the 10 you choose from, that would be so much better.
Of course.
So I think, thankfully, we are in that scenario. And being the subject matter expert, our clients trust our recommendations, and of course, we give them options based on their budget, based on their limitations and their company structure, and from there we move forward. Yeah.
Interesting. So when it comes to the pitch, right, there are obvious benefits of utilizing cloud technology in different ways. What do you think are some of the ones that you have to resort to when the pitch itself is almost expected on the client side? What I mean by that is, what are some of the most underappreciated benefits of the cloud that sometimes you have to, bring out and say, hey, did you even think about this? Something that maybe our audience might not even consider would be a benefit of moving to the cloud, something that's a little bit outside of the box.
Actually, I wouldn't say I take it out as the last card. I usually take it out as the first card, which is more flexibility for their employees. Employee motivation is crucial nowadays, because the generation nowadays, regardless of which group, be it millennial, Gen X, or Gen Y, gone are the days where you are loyal to your company. I mean, it's always most often it's always who gives you the better,
Most efficient,
most
comfortable.
better, comfortable package. So when moving into cloud comes flexibility. Work is where the laptop is. If you are the employer who's very particular about what time he clocks in, what time he clocks out, there's always SaaS models that can monitor the clock in and clock out. But at the same time, gives your employee the benefit of being there with their family when they need to be and also do work. Like, for example, there was once, I had a colleague who was supposed to be minding a relative in the hospital. So his job was just to sit beside his relative. But he was working from there because, it was just make sure that he was there, his relative is there, well taken care of, and etc. But he was working from there from his laptop.
Right.
So that's something that, unexpected. I wouldn't say unexpected, you see,
Or underappreciated.
Underappreciated, yes, of course. And with SaaS models, the beauty of it is that it promotes entrepreneurship, promotes risk-taking. Now, you don't have to buy racks of servers before you can start up a project. You can go into this infrastructure service models, Azure or Google, and then subscribe for a while and prototype your project and see whether it works. Go sell the POC, it all works well and fine, then you start raising funds.
Right.
That's so much more amazing now, isn't
You're
it?
no longer limited to the hardware you have.
Yes, exactly. And having said that, it cuts down carbon footprint. I mean, we are that's a big
That's
topic.
true.
Electronic waste is a big topic right now. So with cloud computing, you cut down carbon footprint. In-house on-premises servers can waste a lot of energy, and continuous running computers, the amount of energy is ridiculous. And not to talk about devices, storages that once they are obsolete, you have to throw away and etc. So when you cut that down, it's amazing how much carbon footprint you can cut down. And in fact, millennials nowadays actually don't mind paying the extra $1 to support such causes, which is interesting and it's good to know. Another thing that I always tell the youths that I mentor is that the ability to go global easily.
Right.
I mentor a few youths who are for career planning, and I tell them, it's possible with cloud computing. Now it's possible to be working in Singapore and your employer is in San Francisco. With a global employer comes a different perspective in company culture, different perspective in the way you work, the way you interact with your colleagues. And if for whatever reason you decide to go sit down in Bali for a month and you want to work from there, it's possible.
Right.
Because once again, work is where the screen is. You have to log in, fulfill the deliverables, and then send it across whichever portal or whichever platform, and done. You're done.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the amazing part. So there's so much more, social media content. You can pull down content, user content nowadays more than building those fanciful advertisements. People prefer user content to promote their products and services, and also like being a copycat. I know it's you wouldn't expect that, but that service provider has this particular tool. How come we don't have it?
Right.
You just tell them, okay, you don't have to go anywhere. You'll get it in 2 days, and you are able to replicate it and make your guy happy as well. So
High tide raises all boats.
yes. So I guess these are the underappreciated benefits, which is actually at your face, but you didn't realize that it's cloud computing, cloud innovation that's making it all happen.
I think it's elegant. Going back to something you said, it's an elegant way to connect climate change to something called the cloud. That was a nice touch. Another thing, I wouldn't maybe categorize this so much as a benefit or something that would be underappreciated, but definitely a catalyst, is that now we're getting to a point where the new generation is expecting this, right? So it's either you do it or your competitors will.
Yes, correct.
Right, so because the new generations will not adapt to a financial institution like a bank who doesn't have these kinds of solutions that follow you everywhere you go. Same when it comes to education. Now, education, it is expected that you can continue your learning wherever you are, whether it is something as simple as an ebook, right? So you can continue learning even if you don't have the physical book with you. There's a lot of things that go into it where now it is expected. So a lot of companies that haven't made the jump are looking around and saying, okay, now how can we do this properly?
Yes,
and I think that's for businesses such as yours and for consulting services, I think that's going to be an interesting bubble to burst. Is that okay? How can we bring everyone that needs to be in this next generation on board?
Yes, I think in that perspective, when the competition gets tough, it boils down to relationship.
Right.
Cloud innovation is as big as the ocean. And there's so many tools. If I say I'm jack of all trades, please.
Right.
Exactly. So if I tell you, okay, I have a pool of 100 services that I'm really good at, and from that, this is yours. This is best that it's suitable for you, even for you to buy in to my recommendation. It's the relationship that we have. So
Right.
I think at the end of the day, once again, it boils down to human trust.
Yes.
Human trust before the computer, before technology. And yes, when it's almost needed, the next thing that the human wants is to be able to trust you for the recommendation. Yeah?
Right.
So I guess that's as simple as it is. Business as usual, and when you want to recommend technology, you have to lean back on this.
Right.
Yes.
No, that's a very good point. And just to play a card you drew out earlier when it comes to entrepreneurship, and going on what you just said now, the only thing that is going to be the deciding factor between two companies or more companies competing with each other is the idea. Right, because you're no longer restricted by the hardware. You're really just, how do we utilize this? Right, we can scale now. It's not like you mentioned earlier, buy up server farms as our users or as our learners or as our clients come in. Now it's okay. We need to just have the best idea. The rest will take care of itself. Yes. And I think that's really where the fervor around the fintechs has really exploded recently. Is now everybody has a great idea, and it's not as complicated as it used to be a major player.
Yes, that's correct. That's where cloud innovation has played a big part in this, where, like what you mentioned, smaller players are in the same level playing field as the big players.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of the idea, the passion, and the risk factor that you're able to take. And that's when the bigger companies have to come down and be agile and keep up with this fluid pace and be able to innovate. And that's when some enterprises have adopted this concept of incubators, where they allow the smaller startups, where they groom and adopt the smaller startups,
right,
and let them incubate their ideas and eventually, fund them and buy them over and etc. So that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the biggest ships that take the longest to turn.
Yes.
So they do have. Smaller, whether it's an SME or fintechs, they have, like you said, they're much more agile. They're much more nimble when it comes to market trends, making sure that, and also when it comes to outward perception of actually having a personality, right? A lot of young people try to identify with, okay, well, this is going to be our voice, our message. This is how we're going to differentiate ourselves. And that's much easier to do when you're a smaller team.
Yes, correct.
And trying to, get that personality across, rather than a big, either a big bank or a big corporate that might already have an idea in many people's minds of what they represent.
Yeah, and it also, it will create a sense of conflict, because why is this big giant being so passionate? What is it? What is the hidden agenda? It's all about the storytelling at the end of the day. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So I know this is a rather broad question. We touched on it just before we started earlier, but in your opinion, where do you see this going over the next 5 to 10 years? Because, we could have had this conversation 10 years ago, and the answer would have probably been completely different than what we actually ended up with.
Yes.
So I'm curious, where, in your perspective, based on your experience, where you see this going?
Based on my experience, I think 10 years from now, blockchain will no longer be a buzzword. Blockchain is known as Cloud 2.0.
Right.
So the reason why I make this statement is because in cloud computing, I think one of the biggest concerns or challenges is about security, data security. And when you move forward with innovation, you always want to improve and polish on the technology.
Right.
So blockchain addresses this, where you say, okay, now the cloud service provider has all the has a centralized server. With blockchain, he said, okay, now since that's your problem, I'm going to split it up. I'm going to break it up and let everybody have the piece of the pie so that, you can't go wrong. Nobody can alter it. It's, it's trustless and everybody owns the same information. So now, there you go. Your trust issue is solved. Mm-hmm. So I guess, for us to adopt and bring this to be mainstream, we are probably 10% there right now. I think to become mainstream will take another 5 years.
Okay.
And then from there, of course, the other emerging technologies. Remember when we first started the conversation, we were talking about the big announcement Microsoft made yesterday. Mm-hmm. My brother's in this domain. So I was asking him, hey, so is this what you're doing? He said, you know what? It all depends on the network bandwidth and whether it's pre-recorded or it's live, the holographic presence thing. So we can have the technology, we can have the innovation. Whether the network can withstand it, can deliver it is another question. So then when we are talking about network, we are moving on to 5G. 5G has all these controversies. Will 5G be sufficient 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Or we have to wait for the next XG or 7G or whatever not.
Right.
So I think that's where we are moving forward to. So we've moved from on-prem to cloud. So the next will be maybe deviceless. I think we have seen that in sci-fi movies. Maybe it will come true. Did you imagine Uber 10 years ago? Did you imagine, IoTs 10 years ago that have been innovated and being used to this extent?
Right.
So I guess, your guess is as good as mine. 10 years from now, I really don't want to know.
No, it's actually interesting you bring up the bandwidth issue because I might have to take back something I said earlier when it comes to being limited by hardware, because I guess inherently working with the cloud, you are dependent on the internet connection you are working with.
Yes.
Yeah. So and we've run into that as well. I mean, and I'm sure you have. When you're traveling and you just don't have access to software that now is only accessible when you have internet.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So that would be a good and a bad problem. I think, as humans, the moment I think now people have this this trend going on where they have a technology detox.
Yes.
So I think it's a good thing. Everything in moderation.
Right.
So coming back to subject matter, I think 5 years, 10 years from now, how do we solve this without having to be online? How can we be online without having to be online all the time?
Right.
Probably we'll see a solution for that as well. Yes.
Interesting. Okay. And you did mention some of the big players and where we're going in the next 5 to 10 years, and as the veil gets pulled back on what sort of technologies the public is willing to accept, and how far we're willing to take it. One of the hurdles, which I alluded to earlier, is on regulation, right? And I'm curious because, again, to use a timely reference, Facebook.
Oh yes.
When it comes to the $1 billion or the $5 billion fine that they just got slapped with, I'm curious as to when it comes to privacy, when it comes to the security for corporates, but also on a personal level, which we've also seen a lot of data leaks, whether it's with Yahoo with the emails, and we even had some in Singapore with with health information.
Yes, correct.
At what point does regulation step in and just by inherent supervision stalls some of the progress that could be made? And is that a good thing?
I think due diligence from the consumer side is important.
Right.
I mean, instead of asking so many questions before you engage in that service, especially when you're an enterprise, you need to do your due diligence, because for these service providers, that's their bread and butter. I'm sure they would have done a fair bit of due diligence. I mean, they would have done their infrastructure setup, their security and everything. But as a consumer, I mean, even if you're buying a pair of shoes, you're going to check whether both sides are the same size, correct? So why don't you check the same thing with your service? Although it's just 3 clicks away, make sure that what kind of data you're putting on the cloud. Is it even advisable that you put such sensitive data on the cloud? And then ask yourself, where is this data located? If you're buying a service or infrastructure service, where is this service located? Based on your legal jurisdiction, is there any impact? Is there any impact on the laws on your side? The data oversight. What is the contingency plan? What type of data privacy and protection laws or policies do these service providers have? Do that due diligence and checks as well. And of course, the most important thing when you talked about healthcare leaks is data control. Who has access to this data, and how are they getting the access? How many layers of control or logins or authentications is needed before somebody can have access, your service provider can have access to your data? Because if you read deeper, these leaks were not caused by anybody external. It was internal. So then, that's when the service provider needs to inform you how they do their security. Yeah. So once again, with all this, I think that's when Cloud 2.0.
Right.
So, if centralized server is centralization is the challenge and the main concern, how can we solve that? So for now, the world knows it's blockchain.
Right.
Maybe in the future, another
type of ledger system.
Another type of ledger system, of
Right.
course. So so right now I think prevention is better than cure. So do your due diligence.
Right.
In Singapore, the government has this thing called the Data Protection Trust Mark. Enterprises that want to go into the cloud space or want to engage an IT solution provider, they can look out for solution providers with this mark. I'm sure there are similar identifications and trust marks overseas as well. So look out for those marks, and then before you engage your service provider.
Right. Do you think this generation, or at least in the future generations, will have a completely different perspective on privacy? Because we do have regulation that takes a look at individual privacy in a way that is very traditional, right? It is in a way that is, okay, well, this information should belong to you, it shouldn't belong to anyone else. But with the advent of social media, right, and even things, just applications that we don't really, most people, I know, can speak for myself, certainly, I don't read all of the policies when I download an app. A recent example of that is with the Face app.
Oh yes.
Right. So and it recently came about. So there, for those unaware, there was an application on mobile devices that you would upload your own photos and they would be able to transform it in different ways. And that caught the social media wave, and millions of people around the world were using it. And shortly afterwards, it came out that the company was owned by it was from a Russian company.
Yes.
Which in itself is not really the problem. The thing is, it was what they were allowed to access on your phone when it came to all of the personal data, including your likeness and your face. And I would feel that had that information come out 5 or 10 years ago, that would have been a much bigger deal.
Yes, definitely.
And now everybody's like, well, yeah, of course, yes. Right? They put all their photos online anyway.
Exactly.
So what is the difference, right? Is okay, well, my likeness, my information, all of that stuff is public record. For the most part, is public record. And most people, I don't want to generalize either, but a lot of people really aren't too fazed by it. And I'm wondering if that's really the trend that's going to continue, because you did mention the distributed ledger, or at least an online ledger where everything is public information, or at least accessible in the cloud. Mm-hmm. Is that the direction we're going? Is, well, everything is just accessible? Mm-hmm. A much more long-term view of if we are going away from physical storage, mm-hmm. is it just accepted that things will leak and people will just have access to whatever we put in the cloud?
Data hack is something that we cannot avoid,
right.
But we can prevent. And consumers knowing their risk and also being vigilant about what they put online is very important. Using social media as your life diary is, of course, you are asking for it. And being well knowledgeable about, what goes up and how it's circulated, how it's manipulated is just equally important. Mm-hmm. I think we have come to a point where privacy, I think we've lost it.
Yes.
We've lost it. I think there's no debate about it.
Right.
We've lost it. Sometimes what I do is that I use a Post-it to cover the lens of my laptop. I think many people do as well.
Yes.
You don't know who's hacking in from where, how. Yeah, of course, blockchain technology can prevent that. But not everybody is adopting blockchain technology just as yet. So maybe this problem will be solved 5 to 10 years from now, where your privacy is truly yours. But like what you said, I mean, this has become the way of life. So if you want something to be private, don't even digitalize it.
Right.
If you want to convey a message that you don't want it to be leaked, meet the person. Even if you have to take a flight down, do it. Because, like you said, we've come to an era where, privacy is only guaranteed when it's not digitalized.
Right.
So, of
and
course.
Even then.
Yeah. Yeah, you have seen lots of memes, social media memes, right? Siri is listening. Alexia is listening. Yeah. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It may save your life.
Well, it also it allows more people to use software that they would have never had access to otherwise, right? That's the reason Facebook is free.
Yes, exactly.
Right, that's the reason Google is free, is
Yes.
because they collect this information, and for most people, that's enough, right?
Yes.
It's good enough of, okay, well, what is the trade-off? What am I paying, right? Am I paying for money, with money rather, or am I paying with information and data, right? And that's a currency that most people, and more are willing to pay with.
Yes, exactly. I totally agree with that. And when it's a mutual consent, I mean, there's no debate about it, and we just pray and hope that these people who collect our data use it for the better. Don't you agree? I'm not going to use any other fanciful words. I just hope that these data collected and the insights that I reap will make positive social impact and leave the negative impact to a minimal.
Right.
Yes.
So we've touched on a lot of what I was hoping that we were going to discuss today. We did already allude to a little bit on the idea of comfort, of just this is so much easier to use by having something that is based in the cloud. Something that I wanted to take a closer look at is on entertainment side as well, right? Because we took a look at the corporate, we took a little bit on regulation and privacy. But what does a world without local storage look like? Because I feel like we're moving in that direction. When it comes, basic example, when it comes to phones, right? We have Google Photos now, which is supremely useful because it's basically an unlimited well of as many photos you could possibly take will just always be there for you.
Yes.
And again, that goes back to something that is comfortable. That is something that we don't have to worry about. If I lose my phone, my photos are still there.
Yes.
What does the world without local storage look like to you?
World without local storage.
So when it comes to what sort of impacts do you think that would have if that's really a world that will come to light? What I mean by that is the way that we consume entertainment. So we were talking about Netflix earlier,
Yes.
right? Or even the way that hardware like computers are thought, right?
I think the first answer that comes to my mind is the reduction of carbon footprint. Remember those times? I remember throwing away so much of cassette tapes, so much of CD-ROMs. I mean, a person who's very, very mindful of the environment, I think that's a positive impact. And another thing, I've lost so much of photos before, so that's another positive impact as well. So I think on the positive side, a world without local storage, I think I would prefer it that way actually. Because technology is advancing, that my vault, my cloud vault is there will be technology that really secures my vault. So that I'm not worried about. It's just a matter of my awareness of which vault, which storage to use to keep my documents, my photos, my company's data, so that my successors, they know where to retrieve it, as compared to a CPU where if it's gone, it's all gone.
Right.
Imagine, what if that impacts your regulation policies, like certain companies' compliance policies, they need to keep data worth 7 years there. If it's all in hard copy, if there's a fire, it's gone, it's gone. For entertainment, if you're recording family memories, If it's all
Right.
there and the cassette tapes, it's gone, it's gone. So technology will improve and benefit mankind because after all it's developed by mankind, I'm very confident that we will have more secured versions of cloud storage and of course something that is meaningful and beneficial to the environment as well. So I see a positive side to that.
Right.
And talking once again about entertainment now, where you have TikTok, you have YouTubers, and with that you have rise of so many talented artists. Once upon a time, everybody is going to those theater houses and trying to knock doors and see whether they get cast. Now is you just have to have your phone and you take a video, you start singing,
Right.
and then you do your own social media viral campaign, and hopefully you get spotted, and that has happened many times.
Right.
And that has opened up a new career path, which most youths want to go down that path nowadays. And it's not easy, though.
Right.
It's definitely not easy. That's a lot of planning. That's something you do here as a career. Yeah, and user-based content is more genuine.
Right.
And so creative, and there's so much more. And
It's more personalizable as well, right?
Yes,
You take a
exactly.
look at your Netflix queue, you take a look at your Spotify, right? We don't work with CDs and DVDs anymore. We don't work with, like you said, VHS and cassettes anymore. Everything is just, if you want it, there's a way to access it in some way, or there's a way to contribute to it, like you mentioned with YouTube and TikTok.
Yes.
So I think all of that has democratized access,
yes.
right? Either to be a content creator or to be a consumer of curated content as well.
Yes,
And from that side, it's giving you a lot more choice. And it's interesting because had we not made the leap into streaming and cloud computing, a lot of that would have been lost. A lot of that because when it comes to TV shows that would have never existed because there's no way that they would have found an audience because you're competing with specific amounts of channels and the fact that they would have to watch it on only one screen in the house.
Yes, correct.
Right? Where now you can have one TV in the house, sure, but then you can also, your child can also be watching something completely different on their mobile or your husband or wife can be on the iPad or something like that. It really has made it so that you can consume exactly what you want to without being constrained in that way.
I think another thing that I want to add is that with the innovation of social media in terms of user-based content, these traditional media artists, they can now leverage on these social media content platforms to put their content and for a wider outreach. Like I have friends in the media, their content is broadcasted on the local channels, and they are bound by only the local audience. With this platform, now it's open to a larger audience.
Right.
It's open to the world, and more people can see their content, and they have amazing content. And then with these platforms, that's all possible. Of course, this wasn't possible 10 years ago, and I don't think so they're going to be crying that local storage has vanished, because they're reaping the benefits.
Of course.
From what used to be just a viewership of 10,000, now it's 10 million.
Right.
Wouldn't you want it?
Right.
Yeah, in fact, even now with the podcast,
that would be nice.
Yeah. Yes, so I think it's beautiful. It's amazing how cloud innovation has opened the world for normal people like you and me.
Exactly. And also just to tie it back to, the beginning of the conversation, it's also brought it to companies as well, because it's not just an individual that can benefit from all of this, it's also the businesses.
Yes,
right?
correct.
They've been able to completely rebrand themselves online. Yes. They've been able to scale and like you said, incubate completely new technologies to bring things that make the life of the consumer so much more, so much easier, right? Just by, having mobile apps and having things that are accessible everywhere all the time, right?
Yes,
and
correct.
even just transform the way many businesses do business when it comes to, like you said, through Microsoft Azure or even the Office suite, which is also in the cloud now, which makes things a lot easier. We have Google Docs, Sheets as well, all of those things. So the businesses really found ways to leverage not only their own business model, Google has transformed itself. It continues to transform itself, but also it transforms the way other businesses do business.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I totally agree with you, especially when you mentioned about Google Docs, being when you're rushing through reports. That's a very basic thing. When you're rushing through reports, instead of, waiting for 3 layers of vetting, 3 people can vet at the same time. That is a blessing.
Right.
Yes. So Yes, indeed. We have seen how businesses leverage on these, and we've what you call a collaborative platform.
Yes.
And you've got merging and marrying of many ideas, many different tools to provide an end-to-end solution to make the whole business journey seamless. So I think that's the beauty of what cloud innovation has brought about.
Fantastic.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So yeah.
So we're going to start wrapping up a little because I know we've run a little bit long. Is there anything that you'd want the audience to take away? Maybe just a way, sort of an end cap to the conversation.
I think I've mentioned this a few times in our conversation right
Yeah.
now, but I would like to highlight it. I think trusting technology, leverage on technology, but don't abuse. I think that is a social responsibility, and I think it's a whole ecosystem. When you just don't create a product, you need a storyteller to get the buy-in. So it's a teamwork. For businesses, just because somebody doesn't buy in with your product doesn't mean it's not a good product. You just need to be able to tell the story better. Yeah. And when we talk about cloud innovation, a very simple metaphor that I will mention is that we've mentioned to convince everybody that the open ocean is better and more beneficial than the pond. So I have brought people to the ocean right now. So now, to see what the ocean can reap the benefits, it's going to be a magical journey for the next 3 to 5 years. And we'll see from there what else holds. And whatever it is, technology, cloud, blockchain, fundamentally it's humans. Humans helping each other to leverage on technology to improve our lives, to make the world a better place. I hope it's not cliche, but it's really true. So let's move forward and see the positive side of it, and let's see how we can work around and find more solutions to the challenges and pain points of it. I would put it that way. And, yeah, that's pretty much what I would like to say to wrap up.
No, it's eloquent as usual, Aneesha. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. This
Thank
has been
you.
very interesting. Hope we can do this again.
Yes.
This was fun.
Yes, likewise. Let's do this again.
So as a reminder, we are hosting live broadcasts every month, so sign up to our website for free and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the ICC Livecast. See you next time.